Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at Taj Mahal, which is a board game dating back to the year 2000. This one accommodates 3 to 5 players and takes around 60 minutes to play. So this is considered a kind of a classic from Dr. Reiner Knizia, and I'll describe it as a medium lightweight Euro. But before I get into my thoughts on Taj Mahal, I just want to give a shout out to kienda.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer in the UK. Some great games at some great prices, but let's get on with Taj Mahal. So the setup of the game is going to look like this, where you've got this board, and on this board you've got different regions here with these different tiles on them, and as you can see, they're all numbered, and that's going to show the order in which these different locations, or these, I think they're called provinces, are resolved in. So of course you're going to start at number 1 and you're always going to end in number 12 here, which is the Agra space. Also, some of these spots here and these darker red ones are covered with these tokens, which can give you bonuses if you build on those particular spots. You've got a little kind of legend up here where you can keep your little tokens, which you can collect throughout the game, which are very important and can give you some pretty cool powers corresponding to these cards here, because whenever somebody collects 2 of those tokens, you're going to collect the corresponding card, which can give you a bit of a boost throughout the game. So the objective of the game is to get as many points as you can over 12 rounds, so each of those rounds corresponding to a different province. And it's going to be card driven, so each player is going to start with a hand of 6 cards, and you're going to basically choosing to play those cards in order, and I'll describe how that works right now. So yes, this game is actually card driven, and as I said, you're going to have a hand of cards secret to all the other players, but just for display purposes here, I'm going to show them face up. And then you're going to pick one of these cards, and bearing in mind that the colours of these cards is very important, because once you play a card, you are going to have to follow that card with the same colour. There are certain ways around that, but as a general rule, you have to keep playing the same colour. And when you play a card, you can either play a colour, like so, or you can play a card and follow it with a white card as a bit of a booster, and that's going to be your action there. Alternatively, you can always pass without playing anything, where you can draw a new card off the top of the deck. But let's just say, for example, this player chooses to play, maybe they play this elephant card here, and they follow it with another elephant card. And then let's go on to the next player. So let's say they chose to play this card here, and then it'll go to the next player, and then they can choose, let's just say they chose to play this card here, like so. And then at any time, if you don't want to add any more cards, or if you can add any more cards, you can always choose to pass. But let's just say I had another card, I'll play this one here, bearing in mind that this card matches the same colour as this card. And I suppose I should explain what we're trying to do here. So the idea is that we are trying to be the player with the most of a certain symbol on display. So as you can see at the moment, this player has the most elephants on display. They also have, and in fact that's the only symbol they have the most of, because you see they've got 2 of these symbols, or I think it's one of these symbols, but it's just for the purposes of showing it in your hand. This player also has one of those, and this kind of monk character, this player also has one of those as well. However, you can see that this character, or this player, has more of these characters than any other player. So as I said, you want to be having the most on display at any time, because as soon as it comes to your turn, and you have the most of that symbol on display, if you choose to pass, then you can discard the card that you've used, but you take the corresponding character from the corner here relating to the symbol you have the most of, because as you said, I've got the most of this character here, so I would therefore take this token, or that player would, and add it in front of them. And bearing in mind, if they ever have 2 of those tokens, then they would take the corresponding card here, which are these white cards, which can be used to, again, tack on to your original cards that you play, and they'll give you more options, give you more of these tokens, give you 2 points each time you play them, more elephants, or this one wouldn't even let you break the rule of not having to match the colour of the cards you played previously. So this one gives you a lot more flexibility. But not only are you trying to claim those cards, you also want to be getting a majority on one of these, because once you do, you are going to take one of your little temples here, and you're going to add them to one of the cities surrounding a province. And that has to be the province that you're currently in. So as I said, we're fighting over region 1, I'm shown here. So let's just say the brown player puts their token or their temple on that corresponding spot here. This one's got a bonus token on it, so they'll get bonus 2 points. And of course you'd add those to your score tally. And then additionally, you'd also get 1 point for each, when you claim a spot around a province, you'll get a point, so that'll be an additional point. And then you'd also, as the game develops, you'd get an additional point for each other province that you pass through. So let's just say, obviously this wouldn't play like this in reality, but let's just say it ended up working a bit like this. So not only would they get the point for claiming this city, they'd also get another point because they passed through this province, and also another one because they touched this province as well. And of course that has to be a continuous streak throughout, because if it's ever broken up, and let's just say maybe this player ended up putting one here, then that would no longer be a continuous streak, so they wouldn't get the points for this region. But I am getting ahead of myself here, and we do resolve one region at a time. I can only build around that particular province. The other characters work in the exact same way, with two exceptions. So these two, the person who has the most of these kind of emperor symbols, they will have the option to take this ring here, which will allow them to do a bit of a game-breaking move and place a temple on the same spot as somebody else, like so. And you put the ring there on top of it just to show that that is an emperor's spot. However, you do not get the bonus token if you take that particular option. But again, it gives you lots more flexibility and allows you to share the spot. So if you do have a blocking spot, let's say when it comes to resolving this 3 region here, and you had the king's token, then you could put it there and end up connecting cities that you normally wouldn't be able to do so. So that's a really good option. The elephant token works a bit differently, because as you can see, each of these elephant tokens has a different kind of good on them. So you've got like the, I don't know if it's rice or something, and you've got these tea crates, and you've got whatever this is, coffee or something. And when you collect these throughout the game, they kind of compound on each other. So if I was to end up claiming this this one, I'd get 1 point for this symbol here, but I get an additional point for every other symbol of that type I had. So let's just say I ended up claiming this 4, I ended up claiming this one here as well. So I'd actually get, so if I got this one here, I'd get 1 point for the one I've got here, but also 1 for each existing symbol I have. And some of these bonus tokens have the goods on them as well. Like, for example, this one here has a coffee symbol on it. So again, if I collected more coffee, they would add on to that total tally. So again, that's a really good way of building points on top of each other, and is another kind of a route to victory. Also, once a player decides to pass, and of course discard the card and potentially take the bonus, you're going to have the first option of claiming cards for the next round. So there's always going to be a pool of 2 cards per player minus 1. So in a 3-player game, there'd be 5 cards. And then again, if you're the first to pass, then you'll have the first option to take 2 cards and add them to your hand. The next player would also take 2, and then the final player would only get the 1 card. So they have their options limited for doing so. So it really is a game of almost push your luck, bidding, and almost like a game of chicken as well, because it does not matter when a player has the most current symbols on display. If you have it at any time and it comes to your turn and you withdraw, you are going to get that bonus. So even though I might have, say, 3 elephants on display like this, then I would actually, if I had at that time, I would still get that elephant bonus, even if later my opponent, say, had 5 elephants on display. It's all about the here and now and claiming it when it's available and visible on your turn. And that's basically how the game's going to play out. You're going to repeat that process 12 times. Each time the thing up here is going to get replenished with new tokens, and you're going to pretty much go and rinse and repeat. Of course, you're going to have to manage your hand accordingly, because if you keep winning or keep playing as many cards as you can, you might only keep drawing 1 back into your hand and not have as many options. So it is quite a tight game of hand management, and you do need to be careful about how you pace yourself and which bids you're going to go gung-ho for and try to win. But let's talk about my thoughts on Taj Mahal. Okay, so I suppose the key mechanism in Taj Mahal is this hand management system, this card playing system, where you actually have to consider quite a few things. So of course you're always restricted to the cards available into your hand, and I think I mentioned earlier that this game is quite a tough game about managing these cards when you're going to commit to a certain location, because you might want the particular goods on those elephant spots, or it's a particularly good location to claim for yourself because it adds to your network. But always bearing in mind that you have to abide by those colour restrictions. So you are kind of put in a bit of a box and a bit of a corner where you can't actually have the flexibility at all times, because again, those restrictions are so tough. Of course, there are ways around it by using cards such as this. If you have that, if you have this particular bonus card where you can change colour halfway through your your commitment, which I quite like. But I do quite like this system of keep playing cards, but at any time, if I have the most symbols, I can withdraw and take the corresponding token. And that's kind of a weird way of thinking, because not only do you want to make sure that you have the most of a particular character so that you can get your temples down and build those routes and get points, but you've also got to be careful about not letting your opponent get a bargain. So if, say, I've gone really heavy on elephants, one of my opponents has gone heavy on elephants as well, and then the other opponent has maybe put 3 different characters down and then withdraw, knowing that we haven't committed any yet, they actually can have the potential to claim, 3 or 2, 3 or even 4 characters with a single action, and maybe even do that with a few cards, and then get a massive presence on the board and get those big points. So you've got to be really careful about keeping an eye on your opponent, and to not only help yourself, but to block your opponents as well, to stop them getting that massive mileage out of those cards. So I do quite like that system, and I also like the idea that you want to pass quicker, so that you get the option of not only the flexibility of choosing the cards you want to add into your hand, but you actually get 2 rather than the single card that if you're the last person to pass. So some good decisions there in terms of managing the cards in your hand and how you're going to play and approach the game. Despite me liking the hand management system, I actually am somewhat in 2 minds about the actual route building part of the game. It feels like the rewards you reap from taking such an effort of placing these temples isn't as big as I would like. So what I mean by that is that, of course, you only ever get 1 additional point per province you pass through, which does feel a bit small, considering that sometimes you have to take alternative routes and go around people. There are ways to kind of mitigate that by taking the Emperor tile. But again, it feels like you take a lot of effort to get very little dividends on the back of that. Yeah, this isn't a massive scoring game anyway, so obviously that's weighted accordingly. But it just didn't feel very satisfying when you went to such huge efforts to build a big network and a chain of these temples, and didn't get massive rewards on the back of it. Now there are some quite interesting decisions on the back of the order in which these temples are, or the different provinces are resolved in, because that will kind of lay the foundation on which approach you're going to take, and when you're going to lay back and when you're going to push to get these particular connecting points. But yeah, overall, I thought that there's a lot more interesting and more meaty route building games out there, whereas this one felt a little bit lackluster when it came to that part of the game. And that almost ties into the way the elephants score as well. I will say that I normally, or 9 times out of 10, Reiner Knizia does amazing jobs of introducing innovative and really satisfying ways of scoring from his games, and this one just felt a little bit boring. It felt a little bit lackluster when it came to these elephant tiles as well. If you end up getting loads and loads of the same symbols, then you can get quite big points outpour for doing so. But generally, I felt like it was just, it didn't feel incredibly creative, it didn't feel incredibly big, and I just wasn't overly keen on the way that was resolved. So I thought the scoring in general in the game just felt a bit pedestrian and wasn't really exciting, or didn't really give me those big moments where I think, oh wow, this is a really good play, I've done well here. It really is just managing those hands at the time and acting quite tactically in order to react to what's on the current board state. Yes, you can hold cards back and maybe withdraw with some other provinces, knowing that there's a tile coming up that you really need, and then maybe play the big guns then. But generally, that didn't really pay off, and it didn't have those big moments and those big plays that really keep you coming back to games. I think the balance of the game is okay. I think you are a little bit too restricted with the cards you have in your hand, and you don't have that kind of constant flow of cards which I would like. And I know that is a deliberate design. It's designed to be tight, and it's designed to make you weigh up the decisions you're making and when to commit to things. But it just felt a little bit too restrictive, and it felt like sometimes when it came to a strong province, you just didn't have the cards in your hand to compete with other players that had a particularly good card draw or had a particularly good set of cards in their hand. You are always going to have the kind of option of drafting the cards you want, but sometimes it doesn't work out depending on what's available in the pool. I also think Taj Mahal plays in a pretty decent amount of time. You can get this game comfortably done in around an hour. Despite being 12 rounds long, the game does tick along pretty quickly, and sometimes you'll find that people withdraw pretty sharply as well. So some of those rounds go by, pretty rapidly, and it doesn't get bogged down, and you don't really get bored on particular turns. It does keep a forward momentum going along quite nicely. The board does fill up quite quickly, and it doesn't feel like it drags. It doesn't have that mid-game lull that a lot of these games do. So this one actually does flow quite well. The uptime's good. You're generally always involved, and as I said, the 12 rounds do go by pretty quickly. The interaction in the game does go through this chicken mechanism. I'm always worrying what other people are doing. As I said, blocking other players, making sure they're not getting good bargains is important as well. So, player interaction is key here. And of course, you want to be the first to withdraw at times, even if you just have the one symbol, because you might want that pivotal connection spot. So there is a tension of passing quicker so that you get the best spot, but also kind of holding on a bit longer to make sure you get more spots. So that is kind of a polarizing mechanism which works pretty well for the game, and it all goes back to that player interaction. The scalability is, it does scale pretty well. It does have a strict limit of 3 to 5 players, but at any of those player counts, it generally works pretty well, and it isn't a game that's going to suffer at any of those player counts. So overall, my final impressions on Taj Mahal. It's a bit of a weird one because if you're a regular viewer of my content, you probably know that I'm pretty much a big fanboy of Reiner Knizia. I think he makes great games. I think he makes very elegant games and ones that stand the test of time pretty well. Now, I think this one might be a bit of an exception for me. This one, I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's anything particularly wrong with it, but it didn't really kind of hit those chords that Reiner Knizia normally does for me, where I think, this game is so well done. It's normally really interactive, lots of tension in very simple decisions, but meaningful decisions. This one, it just felt a little bit kind of mediocre and a bit incognito for me. It didn't really feel like it was anything particularly distinguished or anything that stood out from the pack. And maybe it's because I played so many games like this since this game, whereas some of his other designs still feel unique. So this one doesn't really feel overly unique, I suppose, apart from the hand management system, as you're trying to have the most symbol at particular time. But it's a very small twist on a lot of games out there. Ultimately, I think it's a good game. I'd probably rate it about 6 out of 10. There's nothing wrong with it, but it didn't light me on fire. I thought that the route building was a little bit lackluster and didn't really kind of reap the rewards that you spend so much effort to build towards. The elephant scoring, I think, is just okay. It's nothing particularly interesting. But yeah, it's fine. It kind of left us all, who played the game feeling, that's fine. I'm glad I played it. But ultimately, it's not anything that's going to kind of scream, get me off the shelf and play me again. It's just very much middle of the road, Reiner Knizia. Good stuff. Again, nothing wrong with it. He's a great designer, but certainly not amongst his best for me personally. So yeah, not a massive praise for me, but certainly not a negative game review either. Just okay, and in a sea of great games, okay just doesn't cut it nowadays. So unfortunately, I cannot sit here and recommend Taj Mahal because there's just too many great games out there. So that concludes my thoughts on Taj Mahal. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you found it useful or at least somewhat entertaining, then please hit like and consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Additionally, if you wish to support the show, because I am a one-man operation and I don't get any support from publishers, then please consider backing on Patreon at patreon.com/chairman of the board, where you can back for as little as £2 per month. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.